more about the practical approach to overcoming anxiety or working with anxiety, because often it's not about trying to be all peace and light all the time. It's about being more peaceful more often and accepting that you do have all different sides to you. It's not about being perfect. So these workshops that I do, they're looking at different ways to do that. And this is my definition of mindfulness. So let's just click here. Right. So for us to understand ourselves and make the right choices, we have to pause. So I use this phrase a lot. I use it as often as I use me time, that we need to pause. So from going around like a headless chicken, when we recognize that we're going around like a headless chicken, because we all do it, no matter how experienced, no matter how much we meditate and so on, it will happen at some point. Sometimes it's out of our control, like now, and sometimes it's something triggered within. But the key here is to pause. So it could just be that you realize that that's happening. Whoa, this is not right. Something is not right in me or around me. I'm not entirely sure what, but I just need to step back here. So when you pause, it's something as small as taking a breath, sitting down for 5 minutes, having a cup of tea, to something bigger like, right, I need a break. I need to get away. I took 2 days in a pod when Isla, my little girl, was young, because I needed to get away and I wanted to look at my business and I wanted to just be myself. And I quite enjoy being on my own, and I know that everybody's like that, and that's why it's about finding your unique tools. But that really helped me to just have a pause and check in with myself. So it can be a retreat, it can be a holiday, it can be, a stopping work, whatever that is a pause. Then you check in with yourself. So what is my body doing? I can feel the tension here. I can feel the tightness in my shoulders, my face. One of the signals when I was back in corporate, I was making some soup one night and there was nowhere that I needed to be, and I didn't have any deadlines coming up that evening, but I was stirring the soup, my shoulders were up, and I was like this. And I just in that moment went, what are you doing? I took a deep breath, my shoulders drop. And the first thing I thought, which we often do, is I beat myself up. I was like, look at you, what are you doing? These are called meta emotions, when we put crap on top of crap. What we need to practice, which can be done in mindfulness practice, is going, you noticed, good, now just relax. And that is a reinforcement. If you do that over and over again with positivity, with praise that you noticed, that will become a new mindset, that will become a new habit, a new rewiring. So you check in. There's loads of different ways to check in. There's body, there's even psychometric tools. There's learning about yourself is fascinating. And, that's all about that yin and yang and the light and the dark side, and partly accepting and partly deciding to change things if you want to. That is the choice. The choice to accept, the choice to change, the choice to shift your mind or an emotion. How? So this is what I'm all about. How? Because when you are in that place where your emotions are incredibly intense, you know what you need to do. You have a good idea about yourself. Sometimes it feels impossible. And that's what I want to come on to later, because if your body is full of cortisol and of stress, the most simplest way to bring your body back down to peace is through breath and through meditation. But later you can start to work with the mind again, the cortex thinking mind. We cannot work with the mind when cortisol and adrenaline is high in the body, because the body is ready for fight and flight. It's not going to listen to anything that you've got to say. So, this is one of my favorite quotes. When you complain, you make yourself a victim. Leave the situation, change the situation, or accept it. All else is madness. I love this because it reminds me again of that headless chicken. Round and round and round, and then we pause and we go, hang on. This is about getting your empowerment back. Anxiety comes from my sort of self-contemplation is when I feel trapped. This is a perfect scenario to practice this, because how can we find our empowerment in that situation? This is what I want to come back to, because that feeling of the victim is what steals your power. A lot of people on here might be women, and as women, if you have got children, then we often feel that intense responsibility, and I know a lot of it is primal, and a lot of it kind of just falls because of that gender role. Not always, but what I always say to other women and other mums is, you know what, that responsibility that we hate sometimes, don't get me wrong, but it's like sometimes it just feels like you want to tear people's hair out, because why can't they just get it, you know? It's easier sometimes to chat it out with women because they really get it. So what I like to say is, right, okay, let's step back and pause and go, I could be the boss, right? So you're complaining that you're being the boss. I've got to do this, I have to do that. I'm the one that thinks about his or her welfare, well-being and all this, blah, 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 blah. I'm having to do the scheduling, all this stuff that we have to do. Feeling that we're being the boss, but we could be the boss, right? And what I mean by that is you can get your leadership on. And by being that really good leader, where you can use your different influencing techniques, you can get things in place, you can have those uncomfortable discussions with your partner, and you can decide, how do I want this to go, by stepping back, by calming those systems down and making different choices. And we'll come on to that because that's one of my personal examples as well. So it's about taking ownership. So there's 3 parts to these spirals that I've mentioned. I'm going to take you back to that page. So with spirals, we've got the upward spiral and the downward spiral. And when we look at how does our spiral work, we have to look at, okay, what are my red flags? So red flags are things that are telling you something's not quite right. And we'll come on to that. Behind that is a trigger point. So it can be something outside of us, it can be something inside, it can just be something small, or it can be deeper. And then the third part is, right, I know when I'm out of balance, I know what's causing it, and now know what solutions to put in place. Of course, it's not as simple as that. This is the whole journey. This is the vehicle that gets us there, but it's abstract. It's a flowering, all these different things. It's not going to happen in point 1, 2, and 3. But it's keeping that in your mind, looking out for it, looking out, observing yourself, noticing. This is that higher consciousness, looking and observing from a neutral ground and saying, oh, that's interesting. I seem to get really irritable when I'm out of balance. Instead of beating yourself up for getting snappy, right? Use it as an opportunity to hear what is going on inside, because that's a niggle trying to knock louder and louder and louder until you stop and go, because if we don't stop ourselves, if we don't pause, the body will make us, the mind will make us. And I know that from experience, and some of you might also know that from experience or from someone you know. So the downward spiral can be different for different people. So on the one side, we've got worry leading down to panic. This is for more of the anxious type person. On the other side, we have, it starts off as feeling a bit flat, and then it moves down into depressed or hopeless. You can be one or both. So it depends, really. I've definitely been both. Sometimes I can get really lethargic, really demotivated, and really down. And other times I'm like overwhelmed and hyper. This is hyper side, and then the other side is your hypo. So with adrenal fatigue, which is what I had, you're hyper until literally the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then you are hypo. So you're hyper, like addicted to adrenaline, 100 miles an hour. And if you're not careful, that straw does break the back and you are hypo for quite a while. So when you feel knackered and you're like, I don't know why I'm so tired, it's mind over matter, I've got to get myself up, I've got to move myself, just question yourself on that, because your body is telling you you're knackered. Chances are you are not lazy, okay? This is something I think we all dread, from whether it's a subconscious social expectation, this popularity of being busy, or whether it's from family or wherever, you know, all these different subliminal things come into us. Absolutely, Joy. I'm glad you relate to this, but also at the same time, you know, it's hard, isn't it? Right? But you are not alone, Joy, because we all feel like this, and then we all try to live up to those standards. it's almost like you have to go against the grain of what society or people, and this is what is so interesting about this time, because it's shifting the paradigm of what we see and how we see life should or shouldn't be. It's very, very interesting. So when your body is knackered, rest, okay? Knowing yourself that you are a good person and that you're not being lazy, right? In fact, you're probably the opposite of that. So it's about listening to the body. Now, your spiral might start a little bit differently. So you could start off with being paranoid instead of worry at the top, or you could start with a panic out of nowhere, okay? And then you could have like a prolonged sense of worry. This is all a whole other subject, really. We could go quite deep into it. You know, and it's same with the other side. You might start off with feeling just a low mood, and that might make you feel bored. Okay, so it doesn't need to be in this order. It's just a suggestion of what is it for you? And this is the question. Where are you on here? And you might not be able to answer that question right now, of course, because you're clued on and you're listening right now. But it's something to think about. What is it? Can I understand where my point is that I start to go down my spiral? Oh, you're most welcome, Melody. Yes, I'm just going to pause while I read this here. Question of the topic that crops. You're talking thoughts of complaining, a personal panic. Yep. With it. Yes, absolutely. So what Melody is saying is complaining can sometimes feel really good, and I completely agree with this. One thing that I'd like to reaffirm here is that sometimes you find that when we have this whole phrase of let's be positive, I feel that it can have a damaging effect sometimes. I think there's a difference between being optimistic and being positive. And when we feel genuinely grief, sadness, fear, down, and especially during these times, because it's so unusual that we're going through all these different feelings as well, when normally we would find other ways to help us. So it's like we suppress it. We go, oh, I should be looking at this differently. I should be taking advantage of this time. I could be learning a new language, right? And trust me, I've been through this. I used to be one of those people that would take 6 books on holiday. Maybe you can relate to this as well. And then I wouldn't read any of them, and then I'd feel bad, right? And sometimes it's just because you don't want to read them, and that's fine. So I always let myself feel crap, you know, and I out it, and I'm like, I'm feeling really crap. Then I shift it. So I give myself some kind of like moment to move through that. And then I check, is this something just small? Is this like hormone related? I've got this amazing app called P Tracker, and it helps you to plan your mood around your cycle. And it also tells you like your average cycle, because mine's quite a long one. And whenever I feel like the world's about to end and I'm like, oh my gosh, here I go again, I'm going mental, I'm like, haha, and I automatically feel good. So it's about looking at, yeah, I'm just feeling crap and I'm accepting that, and I'm going to eat a load of chocolate and drink wine and I'm okay with it. I'm not going to beat myself up for that, and I'm not going to put meta emotions on top of that, which is, look at you, this is what you always do, because these just pile crap on top of crap, and then you don't know what's really going on underneath, because it is so muddy that we can't see it. And so Joy, I noticed that I go down the depressed spiral every 3 weeks or so. I pull myself out of it by doing stuff until I end up in the anxiety spiral, and then before I know it, I'm in a low mood again. Oh, you give me tingles, because me and my partner used to have blazing arguments